Mr. Sarah, representative.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you in Ukraine. I'm really happy to take an interview with you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Let's turn to interview. Ambassador Volker, thank you very much for being here with us. You constantly negotiate with Vladислав Сурков, who is believed to be shadow supervisor of Novorossiya project and Ukrainian question in Kremlin. Is it true that you canceled your scheduled meeting with your Russian counterpart after Russia has committed the attack on Ukrainian ships?
So yes, that's true. I have been in touch with Mr. Surkov because that's the person that Russia has designated for me to communicate with. So that's the channel. And we've been in touch several times over the course of the summer and the fall. My perception is that Russia's position has actually hardened over the course of that time. Back in January of this year, I had some hope that we were talking about a way in which we could actually solve the conflict and get the Minsk agreements implemented and see the territory restored to Ukraine. But since then, Russia has gone backwards and insisted that it's only willing to contemplate a UN protection force for the monitors and that the two people's republics stay in place. Then they held those elections in November. Even so, I was willing to try to go to Moscow this month in order to see whether there's any basis for new ideas. Is there a way to get this moving again? And then, of course, Russia attacked the Ukrainian Navy and imprisoned the sailors. President Trump canceled his meeting with President Putin, and as a result of that, I felt that it was impossible for me to go to Moscow at that time. I hope we're able to do this in the new year once the sailors are indeed released.
Any encouraged news from Russian side? What do you suggest? Will they release Ukrainian seamen as a good gesture before the Christmas Eve?
I think they should, and all of us are urging Russia to do so. It should be a goodwill gesture. And if so, I'd hope that we're able to build on that we can get some momentum. As of now, that's not what the Russians have said. Most recently, I believe President Putin and Chancellor Merkel had a conversation in which he referred to a so-called legal process within Russia. It's obviously not legal, but nonetheless, he referred to a legal process they had to go through. We hope that that is done as expeditiously as possible if they insist on it. But the important thing is just to release the sailors as soon as possible and ideally before Christmas.
In the context of unilateral Russian military attack, which could not be hidden by its proxy, in this particular case, what will be the measures taken by the US to support Ukraine? Is it possible to convince European allies to close their ports for Russian ships or even to switch the Russian banks off SWIFT system?
Well, the most important thing that the U.S. can do is to make sure we have a unified transatlantic response toward this new Russian aggression. It's not useful for Russia to be able to portray this as some kind of Russia-U.S. conflict, which it's not. This is Russian aggression against Ukraine, and it's something that affects the interests of all of Europe. And so that's why I was in Brussels on Monday, meeting at NATO, meeting at the European Union, talking about options that Europe can consider as well so that we build a unified response. We can think in terms of things like ship visits, and I know the British have a ship visit that just took place in one plan for January. You can think about perhaps monitors or visits. So there are things, and additional sanctions, of course, there are things that we can build up to. And those are the things that we're talking about. In addition to that, we have our long-term strategy of trying to help strengthen Ukraine's resilience and its society, whether that's support for economic reforms, assistance, information space, and cybersecurity, defense support, our foreign military financing, foreign military sales. These are all things that will continue to go on in order to help strengthen Ukraine over time.
In your recent interview, you admitted that it's not a secret for US that Russia has built up their forces along Ukrainian borders. So a threat of a possible Russian offensive, is it significant these days regarding the fact that Russian politicians, let me say, fly off the handle after the independent charge has been proclaimed here?
Right. Well, let's hope that these are separate issues. You know, the choice of Ukrainian people to seek recognition of their own church, that's a religious freedom issue that the Ukrainians are asking for and have now received from the ecumenical patriarch. And I hope that that is peaceful. I hope that there's mutual respect. I know that that has been called for by some of the religious authorities to avoid any violence or prejudice against those of the other faith. Let's hope that that proceeds peacefully as a religious matter. Separate from that, you do have a situation where Russia has, over years, significantly increased its military capabilities surrounding Ukraine in Russian territory, also in Crimea, also now in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. So it has the capabilities to launch aggression. We would have assessed that it's unlikely that Russia would do so, but then we saw this incident where they attacked the Ukrainian Navy a couple weeks ago. So I think we have to consider it as a realistic possibility that Russia could launch new aggression. And what we should try to do is shine a light on that, not allow that to have that narrative go forward, and to try to do anything we can to prevent or deter such aggression. One troubling thing we've seen is Russian statements that are asserting that Ukraine is going to launch some attack or chemical weapons attack or something. These are worrying, this type of disinformation, because it could be a pretext for new Russian aggression. I think it's more likely that it is just meaning to deflect away from Russia's recent aggression against Ukraine in the Black Sea. But we have to be very alert and we have to watch for this and ideally prevent any further escalation, any further aggression.
Is US ready to expand lethal weapons supply to Ukraine? If decision has been already taken, would you specify the types of weapon Kyiv could count on?
Right, well, the US has established a normal defense relationship with Ukraine like we have with many other countries around the world. Ukraine has a national security strategy, it has defense capabilities that are very good, but it does have some gaps and some need for partnership. And so the US Congress has approved $250 million of foreign military financing to help support the Ukrainian military, and we're also open to foreign military sales as soon as the Rada passes legislation that enables Ukraine to purchase equipment. And we'll be sitting down with our Ukrainian counterparts over time to discuss what particular needs, what particular systems need to be provided or need to be purchased. We don't have any specific systems on the table yet. That's something that we'll be developing over time.
Thank you very much for an interview. It's
My
really
pleasure.
very important you are with us these days.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.